Hey everyone, welcome to Webcology on WMR.FM. It's the 28th of July, 2022. This is Jim Hedge, Always Media, and Dave Davies from Weights and Biases. And it's been a long, stressful, eventful, and pretty interesting week, especially in the search community. But to start off, there was a bunch of big news, from earnings reports going south to the news of Shopify laying off 10% of its workforce on Monday, which was a shock to the industry, and kind of a frightening view into the potential future of e-com on the web. Let's start with that. I mean, some people showed up at work in Montreal and Toronto, in Chicago, and were just shown the door. They showed up for work Monday and then didn't have a job 5 minutes later.
I don't know necessarily whether it's a bad or good. It's inherently bad when people lose their jobs. Absolutely. We know for them, and my heart goes out to the people and the families where it's just you show up and your life is completely changed. That. So from that, there is a good bad. From the health of the company, however, it's certainly not as healthy as, say, Meta, and I only list that where Meta's big negative side was they were going to slow their growth with the sort of economic circumstances. That's obviously better if it's just okay, we're not going to grow quite as fast because the economy's not going quite as well. A 10% reduction, that obviously is going to really hit home. But I do have to wonder as well if will this help in the long term? My hope for Shopify, right? Because I like Shopify, is that this is just sort of tightening the belt a little bit. Heck, I've had to do it. We've all had to do it, and just sort of okay, we just need to tighten, get through some lean times, and then we can grow again. It does say something about them not having perhaps enough runway, that they don't sort of leave enough in the bank to go, okay, economies go up, economies go down, right? If you have enough runway, then you can sort of skate through that and actually view it as opportunity and go, okay, while everybody else is tightening their belt, let's us really push our product forward. They obviously don't have that, so that part's a bad sign. But if they're responding fast enough, it would be worse to wait 6 months and make it 20%, right? So it might be sort of contraction at the right time, save themselves, and then hopefully have a chance to expand again in the future.
One of the things I found interesting and pretty responsive, or at least responsible, is how the CEO, Toby Lutke, just took responsibility for making a wrong decision. In Spotify's CEO's version, he made a bad bet. He thought that e-com was going to expand in the second, third, and fourth quarters of 2022, and went on this massive hiring spree, including a number of people in the SEO community, some fairly high-level people in the SEO community, who, again, earlier this week, found themselves out of a job. I actually know of one guy who had sold a house in another city and had moved across country to Toronto, and is now unemployed in a terrifying housing market in Toronto. So again, the CEO is taking responsibility. They made a bet to hire on, and the growth just isn't there. And in reaction, the stock fell about 15% in trading on Tuesday morning, and it's fallen more than 75% from where it was about this point last year, in the last year.
Right. But one could pretty easily view that, so is Netflix, right? As the balloon. We all should have sort of seen that one coming, right? We all had this great optimism about the web based on numbers that couldn't be sustained. We were not going to spend the rest of our lives in lockdown needing to and thank goodness. I'm very happy that's not the world we live in. But all of a sudden, bets were being made and stock prices were being adjusted based on these numbers that just weren't sustainable. One thing that I think like in this case, because things had already stabilized from there, like good, like take some ownership. If you're going to take credit when things go well, you have to, take the hit. When a bet you made didn't pay off, it doesn't mean he's doing a bad job. Probably was a good bet when he was making it. Some bets just don't work like that. But one thing I think we could all agree on is 5 years from now, e-commerce will still be around and it will be bigger than it is now, right? Like just as part of the economic machine. So there is that opportunity. Like the bounce back will happen. It's like, I don't know, I have mutual funds. They're part of my investment, like my sort of retirement portfolio. They're down right now. Am I panicked? Nope. I've seen them go down before, then they go up. That like you just look over a decade of growth. I think they'll do fine. I think like right now, looking at their share prices and going, like now might be the time to double down a little bit on something that's a pretty safe bet. It might be like I'm not giving investment.
Is there an appropriate thing that we're supposed to say right about now?
but like it should grow, right? Like so I basically that's my long-winded way of saying I think Shopify is in good shape. I think this is just an unfortunate contraction.
This was a corrective measure. E-com ain't going nowhere. Shopify is a incredibly robust and getting robuster platform. Getting a more robust platform. This was I made a mistake. They hired on real fast and they have to downsize to stay competitive. Boy, oh boy, sometimes the cycle sucks, but that's how it goes. Yeah. Okay, so speaking of Meta, formerly known as the social network, formerly known as Facebook, and the place that wants to soon be known as everything, lost about, I don't know, just somewhere around $2 billion or so in the last quarter. In revenues, which is the very first time that the company, Meta or Facebook, has lost money ever.
Yeah.
Is it the end of there's been articles about, and the chattering class has been chattering about the death of social media. Like you talk about the death of SEO all the time. That's awfully quite wrong, or often quite wrong. But social media as we know it is changing so fast, and even Facebook is morphing to try to look like TikTok. Is it over? The golden age of manipulative internet?
No, but I think we all know the answer to that one. The manipulative internet is alive and well and thriving.
Well, no, that's the entire web, but the social media aspect of it. Is Facebook dethroning itself?
I think actually the wording of that I think is great. I think Facebook I think Meta will dethrone Facebook. If I predict the future right. Who knows? Like Meta is also in a battle with Apple over the metaverse, right? Like, I mean, if, like not a battle, like they're not legally battling. They're just both on that pursuit right now. I think this was very, very clear that this was going to happen. I mean, to them, that it can't be sustained indefinitely. Growth, there are so many people on Earth and people ebb and flow. Like now I want a new thing. I think their desire to change a little bit right now to sort of be inspired by TikTok. Does it work? Does it not? I don't know. Like you have different people in different places. I personally think it's better, but I personally also use TikTok. So I'm the kind of person that likes that sort of look and feel and interaction. Do the rest of people on Facebook? Who knows? But I think while this is all going on, Zuckerberg is doubling down on the metaverse. And that's a big bet. But if he wins that bet, that is the next stage. Like, yes, social networks are not in decline in like some horrible way, like every social media manager is going to be out of work tomorrow. No, it's just morphing. Like this is that period where there's new networks. But Facebook itself, I think, just will be a different thing in 3, 4, 5 years than it is now. I think they know that. That's where their investments are going right now. They are doing some amazing work in AI right now. And I think this is really expected, logical. I think they're basically trying to, like, with their changes to the homepage and stuff to become a little more TikTok-y, they're just putting like a little duct tape, on some things, hold it together, keep the revenue flowing until the full transition. And eventually we'll probably be talking about Facebook being rolled into the metaverse, and that's now where that functions, right? In a different environment, you happen to be able to access it on your phone. So that's my guess.
Interestingly, I mean, this is reporting time. Everyone's reporting their revenues and or losses from Q2, and so that was a doom and gloom story.
Yeah.
Interesting thing that came out of Meta's revelations, Meta's not revelations, but their earnings reporting was they had subsidized, and this is something that actually I think speaks to what you were saying, Dave. They're still investing in, and they expect there to be growth in the metaverse as they envision it. They had been subsidizing the production of Oculus units, and their subsidization actually cut the cost of the unit by about $100 per unit of the product, by about $100 per unit. They've stopped subsidizing it, and that suggests one of two things: either it's about to fail badly, or the market is strong enough that it doesn't require Facebook subsidization anymore, and they're just going to let it evolve as it should evolve naturally.
Well, and that very well could be, and it would actually make a lot of sense for that dropping us up. Have they learned enough? Like, I could see, I'm not saying this is the way it is, but I could see an environment where they've gone, they purchased Oculus, they've learned what they learned from it, but then to basically let that go and go, we don't.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Google produce the Android, right, rather, and the operating system, and go, we're going to create the metaverse, but we're not going to go, it has to be on this device. We're going to go, just use it. We're just going to give you the architecture. We're going to sell the ads into it, but we're going to make it really easy to work on whatever goggle you come up with, and probably the e-commerce platform for you to sell your apps in, and that sort of thing. So I think it'll be very, very interesting, and they may just let it die, which would be kind of a shame because I like Oculus, like I have one.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see them letting it die. I do see them letting it go, and just like Android, or much like IBM did with what became the PC market, just opening up the licensing.
Yeah, and it would make sense because there's a lot of great hardware out there that you're a great hardware developer. Different people have different needs. I might like a different headset than somebody else. I might want to have like a bunch of different devices. They might have found the same thing Google did with phones and went, yeah, we'll kind of make one, but we can't make them all. So anyway, I think it'll be interesting. I think we're at a very, very interesting time in the evolution of technology. I mean, we have been since our birth, basically. But
I remember back at the beginnings of this show talking about who was going to own the desktop, and whoever owned the desktop owned reality. You own the desktop, you can push whatever the heck you want on the desktop, and the medium becomes the message. It's going to be written in Word. Make it word operable, and that, by the way, that's how old this show is. So I see that kind of happening here too. I don't see you don't lose control of the desktop. Facebook is not going to give up control of a medium, the dominant medium in which its universe is experienced in, but it might cede a lot of that control to populate it awfully quickly.
Right, like Google did. Right. I mean, so yeah, I guess if you're going to follow somebody,
now
they're doing okay.
There's a problem with growing really big, really fast. Google's experienced that over and over and over again, and Google's running up against another wall of, how to say this, its own creation, and it created this wall because it was eminently successful doing a certain thing. But as it turns out, that certain thing isn't necessarily the best thing it could have been doing. So Google, well, everybody, not just Google, like everybody has built an internet economy on information. We get information by planting cookies on people's browsers as they go to different websites, and we track pretty much everything they do thereafter, which is an enormous privacy concern, as it should be. And everybody does it. Like everybody does it, but Google in particular does it. And for the world to change, when we want to introduce, say, electric vehicles into the world, we go to government fleets and we convert the government fleets because they control enormous amounts of vehicles on the road and will prompt changes in service stations and in infrastructure down the line.
Yeah.
Same thing with how we do things on the web. You got to get the big houses to change how they do things, how they collect data, and how they share data before us little guys are able to make those changes ourselves.
Right.
And that's Google's got to give us our training wheels in the new environment. Okay, so that was a long way of saying. A bit more to that. Google said they were going to stop using cookies. I believe sometime in 2023, early 2023.
Yeah,
that's been pushed back to sometime in 2024. So you mentioned earlier Facebook and Apple having having their dust ups. This is something that Google and Apple have been at each other for almost a decade now, really, about on privacy. Chrome is going to continue to use cookies to track people well into 2024. That might say something for other Google products. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Google's main way of perceiving the universe, Chrome, is again going to be cookie laden until sometime in 2024.
Yeah. And are you surprised? Like, these things, they have a lot of smart people, right? You know that, like, heck, some of the smartest people on earth at doing stuff like this work for the company that's trying to do it right now. And when I read this, I was like, yeah, it's a really, really hard thing to do. like this is going to be, it's a very, very big undertaking. I think that it seems deceptively simple. Like, to me, for example, I could look and go, you just switch. Like, you go, we're going to stop using that now. Like, it's almost just, we're just not going to do that anymore. Now we're going to do this. And building that technology. But when I really think, like, as an advertiser, what I'm going to lose, and then as an advertiser, how much less I will spend if I don't have the sort of conversions and I don't have the sort of data that I have right now, there's many, many, many billions of dollars on the table every month, right? That they're risking. So I'm not surprised that they're having to push it back. They are expecting it'll be in their estimates, I believe, is Q3 of 2023, that they'll have some sandboxes to test things in and stuff like that, which I think is a great idea too. Like, let people kick the tires and test it out. But yeah, I'm not surprised by the delay, and it'll be interesting to see what does that do to legal agreement, like you had brought up, the EU and stuff, and what does that do there? That'll be interesting to sort of find out.
Indeed, and there's I guess either Google's going to get fined a lot, or the EU is going to come to a new agreement. And they did come to an agreement to allow Google to continue operating to this point, the way it's operating. So we will see. Now, for what it's worth, this isn't exactly like a nation state trying to change the terms of an agreement. Well, maybe it is. See, technology is weird. One line of code in a third-party app can change everything for millions or even tens of millions of people, as seen in Canada 3 weeks ago. So imagine the problem Google has, given all the different developers, marketers, publishers, advertisers, whomever, right, who are dependent on tracking and receiving data the way they do it now, either using Google APIs and their own software, or using Google specific software. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, indeed. And a good point on that, like, sort of nation agreement, with a reflection of what we were talking about last week with our friends from Rogers.
Did you hear the explanation? They finally said what actually happened. Okay, so you know how TCP works, right?
Yeah.
Basically, okay, with routers and addresses and all that stuff. So Rogers is a massive continent nation-sized network, but there's still a limited number of IP addresses within that network. Okay, so there's in-network and out-network. And Rogers has a gajillion third parties. And you might think about this if you're on Cox. You might think about this if you're on any ISP, no matter where you are in the world. Your ISP is so big that it's not hauling all that water on its own. It's got a bunch of other smaller businesses working with it. 100% guarantee. That's how it works.
Yeah.
If you're on a large scale ISP. So one of them got the internal network tables wrong and essentially took every Rogers router off of the internet. They just didn't exist anymore. There was nowhere to send the signal to. A third party screw up getting a set of tables wrong. It took them 19, 20 hours to figure that out. And in that time, some pretty nargety things happened, like literally for some people, the collapse of civilization. Some people actually died because of that. So I don't think Google's problems are entirely that big when it comes to cookies and data privacy, but third parties being dependent on it can lead to a whole bunch of bounciness. And when Google or any major system goes down, people suffer. People get weird.
Yeah. Now I do know, and of course crosses my radar because it's based on like AI kind of things, but something that good might have come out of this is they're right now investing $10 billion in technology, including like just sort of AI-driven monitoring systems to watch for those and presumably block badness. Like sort of like just watch for anomalies like that. And then, probably going, oh, all of a sudden this zone all of a sudden disappeared. Because it's not like that table got written wrong and then instantaneously everything happens. You've probably watched DNS propagation when you change name servers or something. I've done it. It happens over time. It's fast, used to not be, but it is now. But it's not.
Effect.
It's still a cascade effect. So you could literally just sit there with a system and watch. Like this is more like this is not my field. So I'm sure there's much better ways to do it than I'm thinking of. But to me, you could just look and go, our traffic all of a sudden dropped from there. Just one of the many mechanisms. And then all of a sudden look at that router and is it online or offline and check, this list of things.
By the way, add screwed up field tables to your list of things.
Yeah. Well, you could even just go last updated on, and does that sync up? And then just shut down propagation from there. Like just go, okay, all of a sudden we notice a problem, shut down propagation and anything that's already propagated too, so that we can like at least limit the outage to that location until we figure it out. Anyway, Rogers is on it. At least they're investing in a proper solution. Because one of the big things that came from that, and I know you found it too, is it's supposed to switch emergency. Like emergency is supposed to just automatically move to a different carrier, and it didn't.
It didn't. I'm on the Rogers network. I only have a cell phone. I only have a Rogers. Rogers provides my internet and also provides my mobile access, which is going to change. That has to change. One shouldn't do that in this country anymore. And anyway, well, I think it's actually probably a very much more complex problem. But given the number of devices we have that are capable of monitoring our daily lives, from our Nest devices to our Ring doorbell devices to our mobile phones and our Alexa devices on our desktops or our coffee tables. It strikes me that it would be pretty easy to develop some AI that can understand what we're talking about and just shift stuff around. This account's off, turn this account on. Don't even think about it, just do it. Click, click.
Right.
And in fact, I think Google might be working on stuff that could be used that way. And you put something up about a Google Assistant and Look and Talk, and that's actually what got me thinking about just completely circles, guys. Like, it shouldn't be that hard. We're giving you enough clues.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I know the look and talk that we're talking about, it came up first in I/O, like at Google I/O, where it was sort of talked about, but it was just covered a couple days ago on the Google AI blog.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that you're like, okay, it's a little creepy, but I love it. Right? And it's like most of the things with personal assistants. And one of the challenges that we have with assistant technology, okay, I'm just gonna mute my device, is that you have to command it, right? Like you have to say, okay, Google, and then this or that, or whatever. Hey, Siri, right? Like you have to initialize it. What they are coming up with is a more, and the look and feel is based just on their Nest homes right now, which actually have cameras built in and screens. About to get one myself. And what it does is it watches for you, and it uses AI sitting in the background, which is why it's on the Google AI blog, but looks for a variety of different signals. But one of those is if you're within 5 feet, and it can detect that you're looking at it, but a bunch of systems in place to make sure it's not just like you were looking past it, you were looking at it for like, I just want to see what the weather is, right? Like that sort of stuff. You're actually like looking at it. It will then just initialize and it'll put a little icon, but just recognize that I don't have to say, okay, Google. I don't have to say this or that. I could just begin a conversation. What's the weather like, right? Or I can do these things. This one it's a really, really stage one, right? Like you can tell this is sort of like a V1 of this technology as it advances. But I think this is one of the big hangups that we have with this kind of technology right now is there is this separation. There's a constant disconnect between us and the device, between us and the assistant. And until we can bridge that gap, it's never going to work as fluidly as it should. But once we can get it to that point, I think its utility will be increased dramatically. If it can just know, eventually maybe I don't have to look, it'll just know by the tone of my voice that when I say this and I'm clearly asking a question and there's nobody else in the room with me, right? Something like that over time it can just build in. But this is a technology that'll carry that forward, which I think like anybody who uses personal devices, be it on your phone when you're like driving and you're just trying to like shout at your phone to do something, or the Google Home on your desktop, there's a lot of disconnects. Just like it screws up when it should turn on or off. Like sometimes you'll just be like having a casual conversation and all of a sudden it's like, I don't understand. And it's like, good, because I wasn't talking to you. And I don't even know what initialized you. And at other times you're trying over and over to get it there, or you're trying to ask a follow-up question and okay, Google. And then you have to remember like the subject matter and like, it's not natural. This will move it past that. And I think within 2 or 3 years, this technology will carry it forward. But to your point, like because it's looking for all of our interactions. But to your point, I do agree that this sort of technology, augmented, like sort of a different domain to now move into security and network administration, but this a similar sort of like approach applied to network security or just network sort of efficiency could work, where it's just that's exactly how it would work. Basically, like it's going to look at a bunch of things. It's not going to be Dave's face on a screen and deciding whether I'm looking at it or not, and whether I'm this distance away, and whether the tone of my voice is this or that. It'll be looking at a variety of other different, many of which would be organic signals, different devices on people doing different things, and then also looking at some concrete things. What was the command that was being sent? And then just sort of trying to create a signal out of that to go something is right or wrong.
Like this fascinates me and it inspires me in a whole bunch of ways, but it also terrifies me, mostly because I can't help but thinking the first iterations are going to be like being on a long road trip with a totally inquisitive and helpful child who has ADD and access to a computer with very loud speakers.
Yeah, the perk is, so as I just demonstrated, I just hit a button and it just stops. It's just like, I'm not listening anymore. Fantastic. Which that child in the back seat is not going to do.
Indeed. But yeah, I think it's wonderfully cool. And if this becomes like not only able to understand that you are in fact asking a question without you having to address it, but more importantly, becomes adaptive to its limited number of direct users. Like in your house, there's going to be you, Mary, and the kids. So there's
Yeah.
like 4 direct users in that environment.
Yeah.
It'll become adaptive to those 4 needs, voices, wants, their daily routines, etc. Right?
Well,
That could be kinda
indeed,
cool.
and something I think for us, like I think of it like my instinct is just like that's cool. Like I like this kind of technology. I mean, like we were talking about the metaverse. I'll be in there, right? Like I already like Oculus. Like I'll be in on stuff like this. But what I think I have, like, I'm a marketer and I have problems remembering because my instinct is like this is cool, but is how is the e-commerce transaction routine going to go in this? Like when I've just got like a little display or not, but once it crosses me over into just a purely conversational environment, how is my decision making now being made? Who knows? Like I can't even know for sure because we're not in that world. We have no real data. But I know if I, from something as simple as a pizza in a very conversational way, once businesses are set up to use this technology properly and have these conversations with me, like a chat bot, but better because those two will have evolved over the next few years. All of a sudden, my buying path is completely different than it is right now. And I think that's going to create a very different future for marketers than we're in right now.
Well, I think we're already in the middle of blundering our way through creating that future. You heard what happened. You heard what happened with the HP printer and the hostage technology.
I did not.
So there's a major electronics chain that makes primarily printers. They used to make computers, but now they primarily make printers. We're not going to mention the name again. And that's just an out there story. It's just in the mainstream media. So HP has introduced hostage technology into its printers. If your account isn't up to date, it'll disable its printer. Just disable, boom, shut down. That's kind of I have a Canon that does a similar thing. If you run out of